Thank you for joining me today. I'm Phil Little, the host of the Private Investigator Experience podcast, where we share about the life and work of a private investigator. With my co host, Wade Little, we discuss cases that we've worked on over these last years and interview interesting people with backgrounds in investigations in both the public and private sectors. Now, before we get started on this short clip, I would like to ask you for your help. Would you subscribe, hit the like button, and share this with your contacts? We'd appreciate that very much. And my email is pi777 at gmail.com, or you can leave a comment to contact us with your ideas or suggestions. I get asked a lot, what guides my life and approach to investigations and solving cases? And as I thought about that, my first thought comes from my biblical worldview and working to apply that as I work to solve a client's problem. My theory has always been make sure you know what you're doing before you do it, because sometimes solving a problem can create two or more problems. So we don't want to do that. I also like to encourage our clients to think about preventive measures as we're talking to them before they have a problem, so that with proper prevention, that's very cost effective, they can prevent a problem from happening. And after it happens, it's much more costly, both in time, money, and perhaps loss of reputation. I know it's difficult wanting to spend money for prevention. We don't see a problem. Everything's going along great. But I assure you that I have learned from the hundreds and hundreds of clients that we've worked for that a little bit of prevention is worth a lot of enforcement. I found too that after we saw the problem for a client, and I've shared this again with them about prevention, many of them who are really security conscious decided to install a prevention program to prevent the problem from occurring down the road and having us come back again a few years later. And that has happened. There have been clients that we would solve a problem for, and 5 years later, we would hear from them saying, "We got that same problem again. I wish I would have listened to you. Will you help us solve it?" So, one of the areas that we do a lot of work on is due diligence or clients wanting to relocate to another region or even a foreign country. They need to have the facts about that country that they're going to put their investment in. They want to make sure it's safe. They have, it's not just in those things that you can see, some cursory checking, but what are the invisible things behind the scenes that many times the countries and people in them don't want you to find out? So I'm asked, what do we first look for when a client comes to us saying, we want to open our business in X country, whatever it might be out around the world? And the first thing that I look for then from my biblical worldview is the type of government and the leadership of that country. You know, even if you don't believe in God or the Bible, I think most of us will admit that the Bible has stood the test of time. And there are many good, valuable principles that can be a positive influence in our lives. I think it's safe to say that probably a large percentage of the people in the world have heard about the Ten Commandments, and they know they're from the Old Testament. And also, that is what was a guide for the life back in those Old Testament days. So, one of the books that I look to a lot for guidance is the book of Proverbs, because it includes a lot of wisdom. So, the first thing that I apply when I'm looking for a country to relocate to, it was written by King Solomon in Proverbs, who God says was a very wise person. And at the top of my checklist is I go to Proverbs 29:2, which says this: when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked rules, the people groan and sigh. Does that sound kind of familiar with our present time? So then, my first area of research is the political history of the country. Now, if we already don't have local assets on the ground in that target country, we develop human assets And we use the tradecraft that we've developed over the last 101 years at West Coast Detectives International and from my work in the public sector. We not only look at the past activities, but what can be expected in the future of the government and free business activity. Is there a history or a future potential of government seizure of private property? How easy is it for a foreigner to set up a local business? I look at the type of government they've had, and if they've had elections, I look at the last 20 years at least of elections. Were they free and without corruption? And how did the transitions go from an outgoing to an incoming administration? We do not just look at surface information, but we also develop people across the landscape of business and working class citizens to get their input without their names attached. And we find that people will talk to us and give us good information. We also, in those interviews, the last question I ask a person is, would you invest your money to start a business in this country, trusting the leadership for years to come? And we can gain a lot from that. Then, after we've finished our first step of due diligence, we prepare a report from hundreds of pages of data for our client. And then our team sets down to determine a threat level to advise the client if they should go forward to complete the due diligence package and decide if this is a country they want to set up in. In my next report, I will continue to share how I use my biblical worldview to help guide my investigative work. As an investigator with sources around the world, I'm very concerned about the future of our country and the protection of our freedom as American citizens. Remember, would you help us by subscribing? Hit that subscribe button, the like and share. And our email again is pi777 at gmail.com. Until we meet again, may God bless you, your family, and keep you safe. And may God bless America.